The color drained from my hands as I stood frozen in the departure terminal, watching my mother's retreating figure. The ticket agent's words still rang in my ears, "I'm sorry, but there's no reservation for you." My mother's smile didn't falter as she adjusted her designer handbag, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. "You'll figure it out," she said, then turned toward the priority boarding line with her new husband and his children. Time stretched into a nightmarish taffy pull. My heart slammed against my ribs while travelers flowed around me like I was nothing but an inconvenient rock in their stream. The boarding pass she'd shown me this morning, the one I believed was real, had been nothing but a prop in her elaborate exit strategy. "My name is Olivia, I'm 15 years old and the daughter no one wanted to keep. This is the story of how I learned that abandonment can flow both ways." I watched as she shepherded her perfect new stepchildren through security, their matching luggage rolling smoothly behind them. No backward glance, no hesitation, just the casual cruelty of someone discarding something broken. My throat closed as I realized with sickening clarity, she had planned this. The flight to Paris, the tearful goodbyes this morning, the promise that this family bonding trip would help us all adjust, all calculated steps toward leaving me behind. The small duffel bag I clutched contained exactly 3 days' worth of clothes. Not enough for the 2-week European vacation she had promised. Just enough to make it seem like I believed her lies. I had $47 in my pocket and nowhere to go. For years, she told me my father was worthless. A deadbeat who abandoned us, who never wanted me in the first place. "He left us with nothing," she would spit when I asked about him, her voice sharp with practiced venom. The memory of those words now struck me as suspiciously specific, a projection perhaps, of what she had always planned to do herself. My phone felt impossibly heavy as I pulled it from my pocket, fingers trembling as I scrolled to a contact I'd saved years ago but never dared to use. "Dad." The word looked foreign on my screen. I had secretly copied his number from my mother's old address book when I was 12, keeping it hidden all these years, afraid of her reaction if she ever discovered it. I pressed call before I could lose my nerve. 1 ring. 2. Then a deep voice answered, surprisingly clear, as though he'd been waiting by the phone for years. "Olivia?" My knees nearly buckled. He remembered my voice. He knew it was me. "Dad," I choked, the word unfamiliar on my tongue. "She left me. At the airport. I don't know what to do." There was a pause, just his breathing, steady and strong, then words that would change everything. "Tell me exactly where you are. I'm coming to get you." 3 hours later, as the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the terminal windows, commotion erupted near the private aviation entrance. People rushed to the glass, phones raised. A sleek black helicopter had landed, its blades still spinning as a tall man in a precisely tailored suit stepped out. My father. Not the worthless deadbeat from my mother's stories, but someone commanding and assured. He scanned the terminal with eyes exactly like mine, and when he found me, something broke open in his expression. I realized he had known exactly where to find me because I'd texted him my specific location in the departure terminal after our call. "Olivia," he called, voice carrying across the space between us. I moved toward him slowly, then faster, until I was running. His arms enveloped me in a hug that felt like the foundation I'd been missing my entire life. Warm, solid, unbreakable. "I've got you," he whispered against my hair. "I've got you now." And in that moment, as travelers stared and security personnel kept a respectful distance, I knew my mother had made a catastrophic miscalculation. She had no idea what kind of storm she'd just unleashed. The helicopter cabin hummed around us, a cocoon of leather and technology that smelled of cedar and something indefinably secure. My father sat across from me, his gaze never wavering, as though afraid I might disappear if he looked away. "You're safe now," he said, voice steady as the horizon outside the window. Safe. The word caught in my throat. When was the last time I'd felt that? I wiped tears with my sleeve, embarrassed by my breakdown. She just left me there. Like I was nothing. A dangerous flash darkened his eyes, his jaw tightening visibly. "Your mother always had a selfish streak," he said, voice low and controlled. "But abandoning our daughter at an airport? That I cannot forgive." The helicopter lifted us above the city, banking toward distant mountains. I felt a wild, dizzying sense of escape, no cramped car rides with her endless criticism, no pretending her casual cruelties were normal, no apologizing for taking up space. "You're coming home with me, Olivia," my father said, leaning forward. "For good." Home. The word felt foreign, almost mythical. "I don't have anything," I whispered, gesturing to my pitiful duffel bag. His smile was gentle but lined with heartbreak. You have me. We landed an hour later at a private helipad surrounded by tall pines and security personnel who nodded respectfully as we approached. As the helicopter blades slowed, I realized my father wasn't just someone, he was someone important. Someone with resources. Someone who had been waiting all these years for a reason to fight back. He guided me toward a waiting Range Rover, his hand protective on my shoulder. The vehicle smelled of polished leather and safety. Olivia, he said once the doors closed us in privacy, we are going to make this right. But on our terms. My mind flashed to my mother's cold smile as she turned away, her hand resting on her new husband's arm like he was her prize. The familiar burn of rejection twisted into something hotter, sharper. What about her? I asked, voice small but vibrating with something stronger than fear. Determination. My father's expression hardened into something lethal. Don't worry, he said quietly. When she returns from her precious vacation, she'll learn exactly what it means to abandon what's hers. I settled back against the seat, the tears finally subsiding, my heart beginning to heal in tiny, fragile increments. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. And when my mother returned from her European escape, she would discover what it felt like to be the one with nothing left. The days that followed felt like stepping into an alternate reality, one my mother had sworn didn't exist. My father's house was a masterpiece of timber and glass nestled in the mountains, with views that made me feel like I could see the curvature of the earth. Staff members called me Miss Olivia with genuine warmth. I slept in a room with windows that opened to pine-scented air, ate meals without anyone criticizing my appetite, and slowly began to understand what it meant to be wanted. My father stayed close, never hovering but always present, a steadying force I hadn't known was possible in a parent. He asked what books I liked, what music I listened to, what subjects interested me, questions so simple yet so foreign they nearly made me cry again. One evening, I found myself on the deck overlooking the forest below, wrapped in a soft blanket as twilight settled around us. My father sat beside me, quiet but present. You deserve better than what happened, he said finally, voice gentle but certain. I swallowed hard against the tightness in my throat. She always told me you hated me. That you left us. He went still, shoulders tensing visibly. I never stopped looking for you, Olivia. She took you and disappeared. Every time I got close, she'd move again. The pain in those words made my chest ache. 15 years of searching, of being just steps behind. I'm sorry, I whispered. He shook his head fiercely. No. Never apologize for what was done to you. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight between us shifting into something lighter, cleaner. She won't get away with this, he said finally, his voice soft but dangerous. A shiver ran through me. What do you mean? He turned to me, his expression calculating but protective. Her new husband, Richard, isn't it? He's a real estate investor. And that beautiful vacation they're enjoying? She paid for it with funds from an account that isn't legally hers. I stared at him, realization dawning slowly. How do you know that? A dark, satisfied smile crossed his face. I've had people watching for years, Olivia. Waiting for her to make a mistake. After she took you and vanished, I hired private investigators to track your movements. They've documented everything, including her financial activities. He paused. When she returns to that house she's so proud of, she'll find the locks changed and an eviction notice on the door. Frozen accounts. No place to run. My heart pounded so hard I felt lightheaded. You'd really do that? His eyes were diamond hard in the fading light. For leaving my daughter like unwanted luggage in an airport terminal? I'd do worse. I leaned against his shoulder, something long dormant beginning to bloom in my chest, not just safety but justice. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without nightmares. 2 weeks later, it finally happened. According to my father's contacts, my mother's flight would be landing back in the country today after her European vacation. I was reading on the window seat in my room when my father appeared in the doorway, his phone in his hand. The expression on his face told me everything. It's her, he said simply, offering me the phone. I took it, my hand surprisingly steady. Hello? Olivia? My mother's voice was thin and brittle, nothing like the smooth, controlled tone I remembered. Where are you? I could hear chaos in the background, echoing sounds of an empty house, angry voices, the sharp edge of panic in her breathing. I'm with Dad, I said simply. She inhaled sharply. With him? After everything I told you. You mean after you abandoned me at an airport? I interrupted, surprised by my own steadiness. That was a misunderstanding, she snapped, desperation fracturing her composure. I thought you'd manage. I laughed, a sound so raw and unfamiliar it startled even me. At 15? Alone with $47. Silence stretched between us. I came back and everything was gone, she finally whispered. The locks, the accounts, everything. My father watched me calmly, a silent pillar of support. You should have thought of that, I told her, my voice cool and unfamiliar. You walked away from me. This is my house. She hissed, composure finally shattering completely. No, I replied, each word precise and sharp. It was Dad's house. He had maintained legal ownership even after you left with me, and you lost it. She went silent, and I could almost see her, broken, furious, trapped in the consequences of her own making. You can come back, she tried one last time, voice honeyed with false concern. We'll figure something out. I looked at my father, at the peaceful room around me, at a world where I was valued, and felt the answer crystallize within me. No, I said softly but firmly. I'm not coming back. I ended the call and handed the phone back to my father, who squeezed my shoulder gently. Proud of you, he said quietly. Tears pricked my eyes, but they were different now, warm with relief, not cold with rejection. She'll be okay, right? I asked, surprised by the question even as it left my lips. He nodded. She'll survive. But now she knows what being truly alone feels like. I exhaled slowly, feeling something tight in my chest finally release. For the first time, I wasn't the abandoned child. I was the one who had walked away on my own terms. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a world newly washed clean. I slept without startling awake, ate without apology, and slowly learned to trust the ground beneath my feet. My father arranged for a private tutor to help me catch up with school, bought me clothes that actually fit, and showed me what it meant to be valued instead of tolerated. One afternoon, I found him in his study, a quiet storm of activity behind his desk. Legal documents spread across polished wood, his expression focused but satisfied. Dad? I asked carefully. What happens to her now? He looked up, his gaze thoughtful but resolute. Her accounts remain frozen. The house is back in my name. She has no access to your trust fund, the lawyers have made certain of that. Relief flooded through me, along with a surprising thread of concern. She might hate me for this, I admitted quietly. He rose from his chair and came to face me, his hands gentle on my shoulders. Olivia, he said, voice firm but kind, you cannot carry guilt for her choices. She left you. Not the other way around. A tear slipped free, but I didn't brush it away. She was supposed to be my mother, I whispered. He nodded, grief flickering across his features. She was supposed to protect you. She didn't. I will. A quiet strength spread through me. I realized then that love could be both fierce and gentle, and that someone could fight for me without making me feel like a burden. That night, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, birthdays where my mother's smile never reached her eyes, school events where I stood apart, always slightly out of focus. I deleted them one by one, and with each vanished image, I felt lighter. A week later, a certified letter arrived, heavy with legal language and threats. My mother's signature slashed across the bottom, each loop and curve vibrating with fury. She was contesting the eviction, claiming emotional distress, alleging I'd been manipulated. My father reviewed it calmly, unbothered by her accusations. This is desperation, he said simply. She has nothing left. I exhaled slowly, relief mingling with a strange sadness. Why won't she just let go? His eyes were steady, untroubled. Because she's losing control, and people like her don't know how to exist without it. The legal team moved with swift precision. Within days, they had dismantled every claim she attempted to make, reducing her threats to empty words on expensive paper. The next morning, I found my father at breakfast, reading the news with quiet satisfaction. It's over, he told me. Legally and financially. She can't touch you again. The silence around us felt vast and perfect, like standing in an empty cathedral. I sat across from him, suddenly aware that the cereal in my bowl tasted better than any gourmet meal I'd ever had at her table. Thank you, I whispered. His expression softened. No, Olivia. Thank you for surviving. For trusting me to bring you home. Emotion caught in my throat as he reached for my hand across the table, his grip strong and certain. You're safe now, he said again, not a statement but a promise. That night, standing on the deck under a sky brilliant with stars, I thought about my mother. I imagined her somewhere alone, walls closing in, learning what true abandonment felt like. I found out later that Richard had left her after discovering she'd used his money without permission and that his children wanted nothing to do with her deception. But the thought didn't feel cruel or vindictive. It felt clean, like justice, because I hadn't destroyed her. She had done that herself. And now I was free to build something stronger, something that could never be torn down by anyone's selfishness again. Spring arrived with gentle persistence, soft green buds replacing winter's starkness. 3 months had passed since that day at the airport. I'd started at a new school where teachers actually remembered my name and counselors asked about my goals instead of my mother's expectations. Slowly, I learned to laugh without wincing, to speak without measuring each word. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for my phone, anticipating her texts, cold reminders of all the ways I'd failed to meet her standards. Then I'd remember she couldn't reach me anymore. That realization became a second heartbeat, steady and reassuring. One afternoon, I walked into my father's office to find him on the phone, his demeanor calm but resolute. "She has no legal claim and she knows it," he was saying. "Let her rage." He saw me in the doorway and ended the call with a quiet, definitive click. "She's trying again?" I asked, a flicker of old fear stirring despite myself. He nodded, but his expression remained untroubled. "Letters, demands, empty threats. Nothing that can touch you now." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "She doesn't get to own you anymore, Olivia," he reminded me gently. "Not your future. Not your story." I moved closer, wrapping my arms around him, drawing strength from the solid reality of his presence. "Thank you," I whispered again, the words inadequate but necessary. He pulled back slightly, his gaze warm. "You did this, you know. You survived. I'm just giving you the place you always deserved." His words settled deep, planting something strong and enduring inside me. That night I dreamed of the airport, of my mother walking away, designer luggage rolling behind her. But in this dream I wasn't frozen in devastation. I was walking too, in a different direction, toward something better. I woke feeling unexpectedly light. I was no longer the girl she'd abandoned. I was the girl who had rebuilt herself from the ground up. The girl who had chosen real love over her mother's hollow imitation of it. And that truth was worth more than any revenge could ever be. The morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through my windows like benediction. 6 months after my mother abandoned me at the airport, we faced the final hearing, my mother's last attempt to rewrite the narrative she'd created. My father knocked gently on my door. "Ready?" I nodded, slipping on my jacket with calm certainty. No fear remained, only quiet resolution. We drove to the downtown courthouse in companionable silence, the distance between us filled with unspoken strength. When we arrived, I saw her immediately, sitting alone on a bench, smaller somehow, diminished. No perfect husband, no shiny stepchildren. Just a woman who'd burned every bridge she'd ever crossed. Our eyes met across the polished floor. Something in her expression crumpled. "Olivia," she said, voice brittle with false sweetness. "We can still fix this." I raised my hand, palm out, not in greeting but in finality. "No," I told her, my voice clear and steady in the hushed space. "I'm done." Her mouth opened, but the bailiff was already calling my name, already confirming what my father's lawyers had established beyond question. She had no rights to my trust fund. No rights to my future. No rights to me. She tried to follow as we left the courtroom, but security intervened. I glanced back once, saw her reaching toward me with desperate hands and felt nothing. No hatred, no pain. She had become a stranger, a ghost of someone who had once mattered. In the car, my father squeezed my hand gently. "How do you feel?" I took a deep breath, feeling it fill every corner of my being with something clean and bright. "Free," I said simply. He smiled, love and pride shining so clearly it almost hurt to witness. "Then that's all that matters." As we pulled away, I watched the world flow past my window, wide, open, waiting. I wasn't the girl abandoned at an airport anymore. I was the girl who had found her way home.